Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links deck profile. Today we're taking a look at our new and updated elemental hero list. Now we haven't got a new skill, we're still using Hero Rush Rising, which isn't a bad skill, but also it's kind of starting to show its age. So it can be activated by sending one card from your field to the graveyard, so not hand, has to be field, which is fine. If all of the monsters with 1600 or more attack in your constructed deck are light attribute warrior type monsters, and all of the monsters in your constructed extra deck are warrior type monsters, so basically it just has to be heroes. Make one face-up monster on the field lose 600 attack and defense. Okay, that's fine. Then you can add fusion from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So the main benefit of this is that we only have to play one copy of fusion, and we can just keep reusing it again and again, which is fine. The problem is, a lot of the really good decks right now have a really strong skill that pluses them. And our skill doesn't plus us, it just gives us easy access to fusion, which is not fantastic. Like, it's still good, but it's not great. And I think that's what kind of lets the deck down a little bit. But we did get some brand new tools. First off, we have our new boss monster, Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman. This card is actually really good. Originally, I thought that this card might be a bit awkward to get out, but after playing the deck for a bit, it is actually quite easy to summon. We can use things like Star Restart, just easily basically go into a monster, because then all we need is all three of the materials. We use the skill to get fusion, and then bam, we immediately just have a Shining Flare Wingman, which is pretty good. This is basically our win con. Most of the games that we won were off the back of going into Shining Flare and have it just basically OTK our opponent, or do such a significant amount of damage that the game is just kind of over. So again, really, really great. Another brand new tool we have is Elemental Hero Voltic Wingman. This card has been a bit hit or miss. I thought this card would be more impressive than it has been. This is effectively another way to get access to the Shining Flare Wingman, but also obviously you can use it to go into like a Burst Wingman as well. So this card's okay. So it's made using Sparkman and Avian. And during your main phase that you special summon this card, you can fusion summon a level 6 to 8 warrior type monster that can only be fusion summoned by shuffling monsters from your graveyard into the deck as material. So this has a couple of little problems. First off, it's only 6 to 8 warriors, so we can't make a second Voltic Wingman, so we can't do like a big combo turn. Another issue is it has to be from the graveyard, so we can't use this like Miracle Fusion where we can choose from field and grave. It has to all be from the grave, and that can get a little bit annoying in some situations. I might actually cut this down to one Voltic because it didn't come up that much, but I'm not sure yet. Again, this is still just our day one deck. So the last new fusion monster we got is Thunder Giant, and Thunder Giant is okay. We found ourselves going into this quite a lot just because we had the materials to make it, but the effect didn't come up all that often, and it can be a little bit awkward because we have to send a card from our hand to the graveyard, which we don't really want to do. And we can only destroy a face-up monster with a lower original attack than this card. So if we have a way to boost Thunder Giant's attack, that's pretty good, because it's his current attack and the target's original attack, but our skill reduces their attacks. That's some anti-synergy with this card, which isn't the best. But we do want to have Thunder Giant because we have Elemental Circulation. So reveal a level 6 or 7 warrior-type fusion monster in your extra deck. Now, notably, that means we cannot choose an 8, and we cannot choose a 5. So we are restricted to only using Burst Wingman, Elemental Hero Flame Wingman, and Thunder Giant. But then we can send one warrior type monster that is mentioned as material from our hand to the graveyard, draw 3 cards. Then send one card from your hand to the graveyard. You cannot activate non-warrior type monster effects for the rest of the turn. So effectively we go even. We reveal one of our monsters. We then send one of the material listed on them from our hand to the graveyard, draw 3, and then send another card to the graveyard. So we break even. We lose 3 cards, we draw 3 cards. But this does allow us to have a lot of options. We can set up the graveyard for things like Star Restart or Miracle Fusion. We can dig through our deck to find important combo pieces, which is really, really good. So Elemental Circulation is probably one of the biggest MVPs of this deck. This is actually really, really strong. Then we're on 2 copies of Curse of the Rising Light. This card has been really good, but I'm not sure if this is going to make the final cut. I think it probably will, but this card can be a bit awkward. There were a few times we couldn't activate it because our opponent had 2 or more cards in their hand. Being able to change battle positions is really nice because this deck can sometimes struggle to deal with set monsters, which is another reason we've got the Piercing Samurai in here. But the draw 2 is unbelievably good if you can get that draw 2. So a lot of the time to get this draw 2, either it needs to just be turn 2, so we need to go second and we need to open this card, or our opponent needs to activate a trap card, which can be a bit awkward. It can be really difficult to bait out a Compulse or a Trap Hole or an Executee Riding, but if you can get the bonus value for Curse. And again, it's still a good card because, again, changing your opponent's battle position can be really good to either attack over them if their attack's too big, or just change them to attack to get damage in if they're just setting a bunch of cards. So our last new spell card is Miracle Fusion, and this card is fantastic. It's just a shame we only have a single copy. Quite often, we found ourselves using this quite early and then feeling a little bit bad about it because it's just such a powerful finisher. And if you feel that you have to use it early, it never really feels great. But then if you set it, it might get popped, then you don't get to use it at all. So only having one copy is kind of annoying. It's kind of like having an extra legend. And speaking of a legend, in here we are playing the Warrior Returning Alive. So we've gone with the Warrior Returning Alive because we wanted to play Compulsory, because this is going to be really good into a lot of the field right now. This is probably the best trap card into Light Galaxy. This is also really good into spellcasters, and this is going to be really good into high-tech dragons as well. So that means we couldn't use Pot of Greed, and I do think Warrior Returning Alive does have some really good value. Basically, can go into something like Argent, which can plus us, or it can go into Piercing if we need Piercing Samurai, or it just goes into Fusion Material. It can also turn on our Elemental Circulation. There's a lot this card can do, but I actually think it's pretty good in here. We are also playing 2 copies of Talismanic Seal Array. This is because this allows us to recycle our fusion monsters, which can be important. For example, if we use our Thunder Giant and then we get the Elemental Circulation later, we won't be able to use Elemental Circulation and then sending either of the Thunder Giant materials. So if we put Thunder Giant back into our extra deck, we can reuse that again, so it can be really helpful. But it does have a little bit of anti-synergy because we want our graveyard to be full, because Star Restart wants it to be full, Miracle Fusion wants it to be full, and our Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman also wants it to be full. But this card is still really, really good, and sometimes your opponent will just make a big guy and you just need a way to out it. And Talismanic Seal Array will sometimes give you enough damage to just close out the game, so still a really good card. And then the only other new cards that we got is the Elemental Hero Sparkman, which is, again, fantastic stats, and Clayman with the 2000 defense. Now, Clayman has been a little bit hit or miss. I am considering cutting this card entirely or putting it down to 1, because the 2000 defense is really nice. But outside of that 2000 defense, it's not super useful. We don't really want to go into Thunder Giant that much. So the main reason we're on the Clayman is basically for Elemental Circulation. First off, we have to send a Warrior type monster listed on one of our fusion monsters, which means by playing the extra 3 copies of Clayman, that's an extra 3 targets for our circulation, which is pretty nice. Not to mention that if we play Argent and then we reveal the Thunder Giant, which we're still playing Thunder Giant because we want to use it with Elemental Circulation, we would then only have 3 possible targets, which means the chances of it hitting it are quite low, whereas if we're playing the Clayman as well, that then gives us 6 chances to try and hit something, so generally quite good there. But overall, Clayman, it can be really cool. 2000 defense is still nice, but like overall it hasn't been that impactful, so Elemental Clayman is sort of the brick. Really, Clayman is what we want to be sending with circulation as much as possible, but it doesn't always work out that way. So what are our thoughts and feelings of the deck? My initial impression was actually quite poor. We opened with a couple of brick games where we just looked at our hand, we had like all spells, we couldn't do anything, we didn't really get a chance to play the game. We also had a couple of games where our opponents just like OTK'd us very, very quickly, and we didn't really have a way to deal with that. That's not too surprising considering we have only the 1 trap card. But the biggest issue we actually ran into is if our opponent just sets 3, we don't really have a good answer to that. So on our first turn, for example, if we're going second, we'll only have like 5 cards. If we don't open a Curse of the Rising Light, the best we're probably going to do is like make 1 fusion monster and hope that we draw into a Piercing Samurai. And even that on its own is not a ton of damage, doesn't apply a lot of pressure, and it's quite easy to get OTK'd through that board. So the deck, I feel like, can't be super proactive. You really want to be reactive. You want your opponent to do something, then you'll clap back and then take advantage of the board that they've left set up. So this deck can feel a little bit awkward, but it does have a lot of really interesting plays. Like we said, we really want to be going into that Shining Flare Wingman. The only issue with getting Shining Flare Wingman is we have to climb through Flame Wingman, and almost all the time we'd rather be going into Burst, because Burst can pop back row and give itself a lingering attack boost, which is really, really strong. So other than that, this deck actually does feel pretty good. I think my initial impression is this deck, if you draw well, does okay. But I don't think it's still at the level of like Light Galaxy. I think that deck is still really, really strong. But our matchups into spellcasters haven't actually been that bad. So maybe it's around that sort of power level. The main actual problem that we've been having is Avian. If we don't find Avian, it means the deck kind of stalls and can't really do all its combo plays. Without Avian, we can't go into Burst, we can't go into Flame, we can't go into Voltic, we can't go into Elemental Hero Flare Wingman. So almost our entire extra deck is turned off if we don't find Avian, and sometimes you just won't find it. We had one game where we activated 2 copies of Circulation and then used Argent and did not find an Avian. So we had 5 cards in our opening hand, We drew through 6 cards, then we looked at the top 4 cards, so it was just not in our top 15 of the deck, and then we just couldn't really make any plays. Avian is kind of the choke point of this deck, and that can be a little bit annoying since the skill doesn't really fix that issue. But let's find some replays. I could show what I've been talking about.
中継